what we mean when we work with our clients around creative solutions is it's about creating things that are going to matter. It's about that impact that lasts to create change, whether it's behaviour, mindset, awareness. It's all those really important pieces that sometimes get lost in the noise of all of the content that is being created out there. And Cavendish, for its part, really works with clients to understand that we're not just competing now with our peers and others in our sectors and our industries that we're currently operating in. We are now competing with the Swifties, the Kardashians, brain rot TV content. It's all of that other noise that is being fed to all of us as consumers. And how do we actually get those really important messages through in a way that's going to be memorable and stand out against all of that noise? So that's why it's really exciting today to have Sasha with us, who is, as we've already said, one of our clients at Southern Water. And we're going to be talking to you about a campaign that was purely focused on that behavioural change element and how we need to communicate a message through to get audiences to actually change their behaviour and their perception of how they use water. Come on. I might just get up. I'm just going to stand over here for now, just in case of the button. But what was the challenge that we faced when it came to this particular campaign idea? And that was that the southeast of England, and like many areas of the UK, it is water stressed. And what that means is that there is not enough water to go around. And what that needed to help us create the campaign was all around the fact that, you know, we know that there are rising infrastructure costs where we're needing to upgrade what's happening in terms of improving the water systems around us. Climate change is putting an extreme pressure on. We've all probably been subject to the hosepipe bans this summer. So lots of different factors are happening that are really putting pressure on the water companies and water consumption of us as consumers. But Southern Water has a goal, and by 2030, they need to have found an additional 50 million litres of water every day to meet customer demand. So this is why a campaign like this is so important, because, you know, where do you find 50 million litres of water? It's not just going to fall from the sky, although that's what customers do seem to think. And just a few stats to kind of give you a bit of an idea on the challenge that we were facing is that the average household uses 127 litres of water per person a day. We need to reduce it to 100 litres by 2045. And that changing those habits, so everything from turning the tap off when you brush your teeth to taking an hour off your shower, is all absolutely critical to changing those behaviours and closing that gap when it comes to water consumption. So what was the ask? And the ask was to inspire that long-term behaviour change. It's not just short-term awareness. It's not a campaign trying to sell a new pair of shoes or a new fashion trend that's going on. This is something that we need to really hit home with consumers. All of us, we all consume water, to make sure that that behaviour change lasts and that it goes through not just yourself, but the family, the generations that you have within your household to make those changes really stick and make an impact. Sounds really easy, right? Do something really flashy, nice video, everyone's going to remember it, great. Not exactly. This is where I am very pleased to hand over to Sasha, because one of the fundamental pieces of this campaign for its success was the fact that we had access to behavioural change insight, something that as we move forward in our kind of current climate with AI, with everything that's happening, that insight into actual real customers' habits, how they consume, how they feel, is going to be even more critical as we go through and try to create these campaigns that create change. And, you know, everything from energy through to utilities like water, education, everything. When you think of politics right now, how social media is swaying and perceiving different things for all of us and swaying people's opinions, maybe not necessarily in the right way. These campaigns where we actually need to enforce change are even more important. So I'm going to hand over to Sasha now. You might not have to stand up. You've got a little bit longer arms than me, but I will
have a look.
See.
So yes, unfortunately, not that easy. I wish it was. So yeah, behaviour change, whether that's changing our own behaviour or looking at changing our customers' behaviour, it's really, really hard. You know, our behaviours and our habits are really ingrained, really unconscious. We do a lot of them in kind of our, you know, autonomous mode without a lot of thought. So it's really difficult to change behaviours in general. But when it comes to changing behaviour around water usage, that is just next level. Our customers have really low awareness of the fact that we're actually water stressed, particularly in the southeast, so the fact that we're actually going to run out of water if we don't make changes. We have very low awareness around what that means for our customers and actually why would they need to change. A lot of people feel like they're not using very much water at all. I think when we ask customers how much water they use, Charli mentioned the 127 litre a day statistic, which is our average. People think, oh, I have maybe 2 litres of drinking water, a few cups of tea, maybe about 20 litres. So actually that kind of awareness around the fact that water is scarce, but also the fact of how much we use as individuals and in our homes is just not really known about. So when you combine that with the fact that it's really difficult to motivate customers to make that change, we're just faced with a very, very difficult challenge. So we really had to understand our customers in detail to know how a campaign was going to work and actually have the impact that we wanted it to. So we knew that we couldn't rely on assumptions, and that's something that we do a lot of in the water sector. We've kind of had this real curse of knowledge because we're surrounded by water. We work a lot in this space. We kind of have the data to see what's happening. So we make a lot of assumptions about how our customers think and feel. And we needed to start from a position of not doing that. We had to design with our customers and not for them. So in terms of the journey that we went on for this research and working alongside Cavendish, we really needed to take an approach to look at understanding our customers in more detail, how they kind of think, feel, behave around water. And I think the really valuable and important part about this was that we did this research right at the start. We've kind of fallen into the trap in the past of completing a whole kind of campaign and then testing it right at the end. And customers tend to give you quite they want to be polite and friendly and they want to give nice feedback, but actually doing this right at the start of a campaign really got that honest feedback. It got us to really understand actually, what do customers really think, what's really honest, and we'll share some kind of verbatim quotes a bit later on that kind of gives a bit of a flavour of the kind of really honest feedback that we did get from customers. So the process that we went through, really starting with kind of multiple concept testing. So we had 4 creative routes that we tested with customers. And again, that was really valuable for customers to be able to see multiple options and not just presented with kind of one sort of final route. And that was followed by a phase 2, which was some live discussion groups. So these were kind of online sessions where we could really sit in and watch what customers were saying. And this involved a real mixture of kind of audience segments, kind of different characters, different personalities, really different kind of segments. And we could kind of really hear what people were saying and really sort of sit in on those discussions. And finally, we went through a phase 3, which was actually kind of iterating on those concepts and then presenting them side by side. Excuse me. So yeah, I think it was just really valuable to sit in on those sessions and really kind of see that live and kind of have those, have that real life customer feedback. And I think those of you kind of with a behavioural background might be familiar with quite a well-known saying, which is that customers don't do what they say and they don't say what they do. So I think it's really important with customer insight that we really understand kind of what customers are saying and from different angles and really kind of learn that in detail, but also what they're not saying and kind of not just take it as kind of token customer feedback, but really look to understand kind of what are people saying and try and understand that from different angles.
And I think just before we move on, from an agency perspective, having that access right at the beginning of the process was absolutely critical to the success of the campaign. And to give you kind of a bit of an idea of the inner workings, right at the beginning when we were testing out different ideas and directions for the concepts, we thought we'd hit the jackpot with a tricolon. So when you think of like Mind the Gap, Catch It, Bin It, Kill It, that kind of tricolon, we know it does work in other campaigns. So we went in with that and plus a couple of the others. And the customers didn't like it. They were like, no, it's too much. You're asking me to do too many things at once. And that really kind of brought us as an agency back down to earth. That insight in seeing other campaigns out there that are successful doing a similar thing and then it not resonating with these customers, because we had that behavioural change insight from that point and that insight from the customers, it really did change the direction how we approach the campaign and being able to make it successful. So when it comes to that insight, that is absolutely critical when it comes to a behavioural change campaign and really getting it right for the customers and the audiences.
Definitely. It's not going to work for me now. There we go. So something that was really revealed during this research phase is that there's a really clear disconnect between awareness of water scarcity and that motivation to change. And there's a quite familiar concept within the behavioural science literature, which is called the intention-action gap. And that is that gap between, having that real intention to change, whether that's I'm going to go to the gym a bit more or I'm going to eat a bit healthier, to actually that action. So actually, how do you then act to do that? And I think one of the big challenges with a behaviour change campaign is that it's not just about making customers aware and landing a message. We actually have to walk them to a point where they are going to want to actually change their behaviour, and that's going to happen. So it's so many more layers than, just landing that message. So yeah, we revealed that disconnect, which was, very pleasing from my perspective to kind of see that aligned to sort of best practice behavioural science, that really does exist. So we knew that this had to be more than just awareness. We had to motivate customers, but also we had to enable customers. So we had to help them understand how they could change, to see it as valuable, to actually find that worthwhile, to feel positive about it. So that was a really big task for us in sort of getting to this point and knowing where we had to go from here. And yeah, you can kind of see here some of our sort of verbatim comments from our customer testing. And when I mentioned that customers, really don't hold back and give us some honest feedback, this is very different to, presenting a finalised concept and them going, oh, that's nice. Yeah, I would definitely change my behaviour off the back of that. We got this really kind of honest feedback.
Very
and
honest.
You can, yeah, which there's always some characters in the room, so they're very interesting sessions to sit in on. But yeah, I think some of the kind of key themes that came out, I need to understand the motivation financially. That was a job for us and for the team, really. How do we frame that in the right way? Because this is more than just kind of giving customers a chance to do some mental maths. They don't want to. We have to tell them really clearly, what the financial motivation is going to be. We have to make that easy for them. Also kind of thinking about some of those small actions that don't really make much of a difference, and not being able to control what others do. We then really saw the opportunity there to actually help try and bridge that gap, to kind of say, actually, collectively, this is going to have a huge impact if we all work together. And then I think finally a really interesting one for me is, I'm already doing enough. And I think I mentioned that, customers have very low awareness of actually how much water we use every day. Most of us do. It's not really something we think about. So actually that kind of, how do we help people understand there probably are little areas where you could use a little bit less and it wouldn't have that huge impact on your lifestyle. So for these, really, it gave us some kind of, I guess, concerns to address with customers, and some kind of things that we knew we had to overcome. And it really helped us understand where the gaps were that we had to fill with the campaign going forwards.
The one around wanting to understand the savings in pounds and pence instead of litres was quite a game changer as well. So, at the concept stage, we were thinking about all these clever, creative ways that you can show how 10 litres of water looks if it's cups of tea or things like that. And again, the customers didn't want to know that didn't feel relevant enough to them. So the fact that we then did some work with Southern Water to understand and identify those pound savings and being able to put that monetary benefit towards the ads, whether that was across social or in the actual video itself, were really key to being able to get people to actually listen. And there were several that we were able to identify that created savings between water and energy usage. So again, it was being able to double up the benefits and show customers that there was something that made an instant change to them and their situation through being able to use those insights that we gathered.
Absolutely, and I think if we started the campaign from a position of we know everything and we're going to deliver exactly what we think, we wouldn't have been delivering the right thing for customers, and we absolutely, as water companies, need to listen to our customers more. So being able to do this work right at the start and ongoing has been really valuable to help shape that campaign in the way that it needs to be shaped. So yeah, these kind of comments and really hearing them and seeing them live are just so valuable for us. So we know that awareness isn't the same as action, and that's the crucial point. There's so much more that goes into closing that intention-action gap for behaviour change. So in order to drive, real behaviour change, we had to turn that awareness of water scarcity into ownership. So we had to make our customers feel really positive about that change. We had to make them feel like this is something they wanted to do. They wanted to feel like they're part of a solution. They didn't want to feel dictated to by their water company. It had to feel like a positive collective experience. So we were really looking to address some of these kind of, I guess, misconceptions that we sort of found from the insight. So, particularly at the time, water bills were very cheap compared to lots of other kind of utilities, and that's obviously changed recently. But they were seen as, having that kind of low priority compared to other expenses in the home, particularly amongst, a cost of living crisis. Also the idea that, we like to talk about the environment as water companies because we kind of understand that benefit, but actually for our customers, they were saying, I care about the financial incentives. So we knew we had to frame that in a way that brought that to life for customers. The view that small actions alone won't matter, we knew that we had to make sure that we solved the kind of cumulative impact of those. And a view that we're doing enough within your own home. So how do we help customers understand there are little things that they can do that aren't huge sacrifices, but they can really make those positive changes that won't feel like a lot, but they'll really have an impact. So finally, into turning insight into strategy, and a really excellent campaign that we're really proud of. Everything we heard from customers really shaped that creative challenge and kind of shared some principles here that really helped shape the campaign, and these do really align to sort of best practice behavioural science too. So firstly, make it simple or make it easy. Making that feel really achievable for customers. We've got to be reasonable with customers about what they do. There's some real eco warriors out there who do some really great things with, capturing their shower water in a bucket and using it to flush their toilet. I'm not on board with asking customers to do that unless they want to. It's great, but has to be reasonable, has to be easy to do, has to fit into their lifestyle really well and feel comfortable. So starting with those kind of simple, easy actions. Making it feel rewarding, as I say, emphasising those financial and emotional benefits. How do we do the job of actually framing that in the right way for customers? Making it collective, so making it feel like a kind of, not just a what can I alone do, but actually those small changes really adding up and acting together as kind of communities. That's really important to us as a company too. And finally, making it feel positive. So we had to focus on positivity and hope and not making customers feel guilty. We're not in a position as water companies to lecture customers and finger wag and tell them what to do. This had to feel like a positive thing that customers wanted to do because they understood the value and the benefit. So really, I think this approach really set us up for a really excellent campaign going forwards. We learned so much at the start that really set us on the right path to an excellent campaign. So I'll hand over to Charli to speak a bit more.
Thank you very much. So we're going to get to the final product and what we actually created as our hero element. And we've been talking a little bit about this in our roundtables downstairs. So sometimes the perception for customers is that video is the nice add-on at the end, the shiny thing if you've got a bit of budget left over. What we tend to do with our clients is we position the video piece as the hero element. And the way we do that is we talk about how it can sweat for you. You can make a video really earn its money through being able to cut it down, put it across different channels. It's a really valuable piece. And so that's why for this campaign, even though it is a completely robust campaign with multiple channels and different mediums, the hero piece was the kind of the jewel in the crown. And what we wanted to show you is just how that comes to life. So the campaign was called Make One Change. So leaning into what Sasha was saying about making this really simple for customers is that they just needed to make one change. And if everyone on your street did it, you're going to make a huge cumulative impact. So it was all about making customers feel engaged and empowered to start small. So it showed that by just adjusting that one daily habit, so earlier I mentioned turning the tap off by brushing your teeth, or having shorter showers, you can really add to that water-saving message that then benefits you from a financial standpoint, but also the environmental piece secondary. So the idea of the campaign was that it was going to be inclusive, achievable, and human. We had to avoid feeling corporate, and we really needed to avoid being preachy. So as Sasha's already lent into, the water companies cannot, even if there is a fundamental behaviour that customers and consumers make that is really hard to justify. So I was talking earlier about, how some takeaways still put their oils and grease down the sewers and things like that. That's a catastrophic change, and it creates fatbergs. We still can't preach to them because there's always a finger pointing back at those water companies. So the first thing we did, and I could stand up here and I could show you some lovely storyboards and things like that, but we went about this a little bit differently because we were on a really short turnaround time. We needed to get the campaign out very quickly. So our video team came up with a really creative concept where they basically created the ad themselves so that the customer could get a really, really good feel of the pace, the messaging, and kind of the visual style and direction of how the video was going. Mark will be available for autographs later on if you do so wish. But this is one of the favourite things that we do when we have the time for a customer, because it really helps them understand what we're trying to do. So, fingers crossed.
Our vision is the future and continued climate change. More people, and less water
to go around. But if we all make one change, like swapping a hose for a watering can, or turning off the tap while brushing your teeth, or filling up your washing machine, together we can secure water supplies for future generations. So, save a little water, make a lot of difference.
Now, the reason we went with that approach is, as you can probably tell, you get a real sense for the feel of the video, the kind of the personality that's going to come through, and how the messaging is going to land. So in a second, I will show you the final cut, but by no means is it an easy feat. And you guys in the room know how and what goes into creating a really impactful video. But just to give you a kind of an idea of what went behind this particular piece of video content, there was 26 members of cast and crew, so not overly extensive, but enough that there was quite a hefty catering budget. We shot on 4 locations across 3 days, so it was really tight turnaround times of move into those different locations. And that there was over, I think is it 10 hours of footage that we shot, including B-roll, and that got cut down to 30 and 20 seconds. So all of that work to go into that really impactful video at the end. So there's a real kind of education piece around people understanding that when you want to create cinematography as opposed to videography, this is what you need to do to be able to do that. And in a world where everyone and their mum can use CapCut or their phone to create social content, this is where we can really shine and show people that if you want to make lasting impact, you need to think about the quality of what you're putting out there. So that gives you a kind of a little overview into our process, kind of showing what's inside the sausage, as someone once said to me. But what I'd love to show you now is that final piece. So this video that you're going to see in a second, content across the website. It literally got placed everywhere it could possibly be. It was geo-targeted by postcode across the video on demand channels so that we could really make sure that where it was getting seen was actually beneficial. One of my colleagues at the moment cannot understand why she is receiving Thames Water ads when she lives in Portsmouth. So we were very careful to make sure that every penny spent by the client was going towards the people that needed to enact the change. So I will be quiet and play the final video.
Our region faces a future of continued climate change. More people and less water to go around.
But if we all make one change, like swapping the hose for a watering can,
turning your tap off while brushing your teeth,
or always running a full wash load.
Together we can help secure water supplies for future generations.
Make one change. Save a little water, make a lot of difference.
So as you can see, that really was a campaign that was built to connect. We used a variety of different generations to be able to tell that story. For some reason, when you've got a child that can give those messages, it is a lot easier to land with an adult audience, providing that child isn't annoying. Luckily, Ellie was fantastic. But again, it's all of those little intricacies that help to make a behavioural change campaign successful. In terms of the campaign as a whole, as I've already said, the video was the jewel in the crown of this campaign. It was the piece that we wanted to make sure did the heavy lifting. But that was part of a much wider, robust campaign that touched across all of the different channels. So whilst I've already mentioned the TV and on demand, we then had digital and social. So we had programmatic banners going out wherever we possibly could. We had radio and outdoor. So the radio was a take of the video, the advert audio. So again, just creating that consistency rather than having a completely different narrative for the radio campaign. And that was something we took into consideration at production stage of the ad. And then there was local targeting, so everything from out of home, train stations, buses, you name it. The whole campaign was littered across those areas that really needed to take notice and make those behavioural changes that we needed. So all in all of those different touch points, you could guarantee that a Southern Water customer was going to see something. One of the other elements that we did, and we talked a little bit about this on our roundtable, is right at the beginning of the kind of conceptual stage, we looked at different areas that we could capitalise on to create kind of a burst of new messaging that still felt consistent with the whole campaign. And one of the great things about the utilities, and like I've already mentioned about kind of hosepipe bans and things like that, being able to use the weather as a device to change out messaging, to give audiences, one, a bit of a fresher narrative, but also change their perception. So as Sasha's already said on our roundtable, and we'll probably say again later, trying to convince people to save water when it's pissing down with rain is quite a challenge, whereas when it's drought and, you know, everything's gone brown in the garden, it's a little bit of a different conversation. So we were able to use the weather as a bit of a trigger point to change out messaging so that we could reinvigorate those audiences and give them something else to focus on. For instance, when it was hot and before the hosepipe ban came out, a message around the fact that if you let your lawn go brown, it will come back green again. You don't need to water it. That was a really beneficial one. And then also reiterating that when it's raining to keep saving water so that you've got it for when the sun comes back out. There was a whole range of different dynamics that we were really able to use to just reinvigorate the campaign. And it's a behavioural change campaign isn't a sprint. It's not a one and done. It has to continuously be developed, refined, evolved over years to create that systemic change. And we work with a couple of different water companies that have done that to great success. And finally, measuring impact. So the kind of the bit that's like, well, what bang for my buck did we essentially get when we're talking to, you know, the people that have to sign off the budgets for this? Because again, the water sector has such a critical audience that they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. So if you know, they go out on a campaign and they spend lots of money to get people to change their habits, they're then seen as wasting money. But then if they don't spend that money to get people to change their habits, no one's going to change. So it's a real kind of snake eating its tail situation. But just in terms of what did this campaign actually achieve for Southern Water and how it continues to grow, is that it did change behaviour and it continues to do so. You know, 37 million impressions across all channels, 6.9 million video views on TV, VOD, YouTube and Meta. That's a great number for a localised campaign, essentially. It's not national. Up 8% point increase in prompted campaign recall. So Southern Water work extensively to try and understand what works with their customers. So to Sasha's point around the focus groups, whilst we did them at the beginning to help move the campaign along and create that evolution, we also do it at the end, and they do a very big piece of work to understand what worked and what doesn't so that they can plug that into the next one. 13% uplift in customer satisfaction amongst those that saw the campaign. They didn't feel preached to. They felt that it was a valuable message. And then, of course, the kind of the jewel in a crown is we won gold for Best Video as part of the integrated campaign. So a really successful piece for us and Southern Water, and something that kind of gives you that empowerment to understand that behaviour change really does start with that insight from the customer. We can all, as creatives, get a little bit inside our heads. We see everything that's going out from agencies and competitors, you know, the trends that are happening. And actually, looking and stopping and talking to those customers sometimes can really bring you down to earth. And that's what's really important for some of these big campaigns that need to create that impact. And then I'm just going to hand over to Sasha as the closing thought.
Yeah, this is really game-changing and a real step change for us as a water company. I think in the past, you know, this is just really building so much more on kind of the work we've done before, and I think it's really exciting that we've taken this approach, and obviously the campaign speaks for itself. And I think a lot of that is because it was based on people, and we were designing for our customers and making sure they were embedded at every sort of stage of the journey, but also making it feel really human, hopeful and doable. So I think we've delivered a really fantastic campaign. It's been so brilliant working with, you know, the Cavendish communications team and obviously continuing to work together. But yeah, this is really game-changing for us as Southern Water as we try to engage better with our customers. So really excited to have sort of shared a bit more about Make One Change today, and long may it continue.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.